Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we're going to be going over the JT Strong Arm Stabilizer Kit here on a 2022 Jayco Jay Feather. So these are what our strong arms look like installed on the trailer. So in the front here, we're going to have two arms for each jack. We're going to have two bolts on the bottom of our jack here. So one of those goes to the inside one of these goes to the outside one, and then they're just going to simply be bolted to the bottom of the frame. So we mentioned two in total for each of our front jacks, and there's only going to be one on the rear for a total of 6. So if we look at the top of the arms on the outer tube, each of our jacks is going to have this little T-handle here. So basically what this does is, this is going to hold our outer tube to the inner tube. So while we're traveling down the road, we want to make sure it's snug. But when we're going to be using the jacks, when we're going to lower the jacks, you want to make sure you loosen them. So what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to loosen this one here, and I'm going to loosen the one on the other side. We're going to go ahead and extend the jack down so we can make contact with the ground. So if we notice while we're lowering the jack, you can see that inner arm actually extend out of the outer tube there. So once we have contact with our jack foot on the ground, what we're going to do is we're just going to come back here and we're going to snug up those T-handle bolts. Now once we've done that, we're going to do that for each of our 4 sides, and that's pretty much going to be set up. We're good to go. Overall, our stabilizers are going to help improve the stability of our trailer. So our trailer has a suspension, so when we're walking around inside, it's constantly going to be flexing back and forth and side to side. And what these stabilizers do is they really stiffen that movement up there, take a lot of the play out of there, so it's going to be much more stable when you're inside walking around. So there are a couple different options for stabilizers on the market. We have the ones that install between the tires. They're sort of like an X-brace and they expand out. Although those do work well, there's really nothing that beats these strong arms here because they install in each of the 4 sides of our trailer. Now, I personally haven't used them other than just when I've been testing now, but I have talked to a couple people that have used these for an extended period of time, and they really love them and they swear by them. So if your overall goal is to improve the stability of the trailer while you're parked, there really isn't a better option on the market than these. So in regards to installation, I'll admit when I was looking through the instructions and the hardware, it's sort of overwhelming because there is a lot of different nuts and bolts and the instructions are rather worthy. But once I really started to dig into it and began installing it, it was really a lot more straightforward than I originally thought. We do have to drill a couple holes into the bottom of the frame of our trailer, but so long as we do that correctly, it's really not going to cause any harm. And I definitely think the benefit is going to be worth it in the end. Now, with that being said, we'll go ahead and walk you through this entire process step by step now. So the first step of our installation, we're going to come to the front of our trailer here. We're going to locate one of our jacks. Now, we can start on either side. It doesn't matter, but we're going to be starting over here. So we're going to locate the jack, and then we're going to have 2 bolts securing the jack foot to the jack. We're going to be starting with the one closest to the inside here. Take a 17mm socket, and we're going to remove this nut here. We do need to hold the bolt head on the inside, so just going to take a wrench there. Go ahead and just remove that bolt and our nylock nut. Now you may be able to push your bolt out by hand. Ours is pretty tight, so we're just going to take a hammer here. We're just going to lightly tap that bolt. So there we go, that's what our bolt looks like once we remove it. Now we're actually going to be replacing these with one of these swivel bolts that come in your kit. It looks like this. It's a 3/8 inch bolt and it's 4 inches long. So this side here is going to go outward. We're just going to simply use this to replace the bolt that we just removed. And then on the back side, we're going to place a flat washer and then our nylock nut. So now we're going to take a 9/16 inch socket. We're going to begin tightening this bolt down. Now, due to the length of the threads on there, I am probably going to have to switch over to an open-ended wrench, but I'm just going to go ahead and get it started here. I'm going to hold the eyelet here on this side with the screwdriver. There isn't a torque spec, but basically what we want to do is we want to make sure that we can still rotate this with our screwdriver like so. So there we go, that's perfect. If it's a little bit too loose, you can go ahead and snug it up, or if it takes a little bit too much force, you can go ahead and loosen it up a little bit. But this right here is pretty much perfect. Now we're just going to repeat that same process here for the outside one. However, the orientation of the bolt is going to change. This little bracket here is going to be facing the rear of the trailer. So now we're going to go ahead and rotate these swing bolts here until the tab is in the vertical position. So next we're going to take our 2 stabilizer tubes here. We're also going to take 2 of our T-bolts. We're going to apply some white grease to the threads of our T-bolts. And then we're just going to thread them in to the stabilizer tube here. You're not going to tighten them down. Just thread them in there like so. Do that same thing for the other one. We're actually going to be extending this inner tube out about 1 inch past the outer tube here. And then we're just going to snug up that bolt there. So I'm going to do that for both of these. So next we're going to be actually attaching one of our stabilizers here. So the first thing we want to do is you want to make sure your jacks are completely retracted. So for this swivel bolt here, contrary to the one that we have at the rear that's going to be vertical, this one is actually going to be horizontal. And it may actually pivot a little bit as well on us, but we're going to go ahead and set this stabilizer tube up into position. But before we do that, we're going to grab a 3/8, 1 1/4 inch long hex bolt, 2 flat washers, 1 for either side, and then a nylock nut. We're just going to go ahead and set this up here into position now. Go ahead and get that flat washer on our bolt there. Stick it up there like so. And then secure the 2 together with our bolt. And we'll go ahead and tighten this down using a 9/16 inch socket and wrench. Our warning label actually needs to be facing outward, and we do want our T-handles on the top in regards to that outer tube. Next, we're going to take one of our spacer mounts as well as another one of our swivel bolts here. So we're going to be using the one that's much shorter. It's only 1 1/4 inch long threads. That's actually going to go through that center hole there like so. And then on the inside there, we're going to place another flat washer over there. And then we're going to thread on our nylock nut. So that's probably going to be kind of hard to stay on there. So once I get that loosely installed like so, I'm going to take our 9/16 inch wrench. I'm going to place it over there like so. And then we're actually just going to take our screwdriver here and sort of just spin this to tighten it down. In regards to tightening, sort of the same thing we did with the ones there on the jacks. We want it nice and snug, but we also still want to be able to rotate. So once we have our assembly together here, I'm just going to go ahead and attach that to the outer tube here on our stabilizer using the 3/8 by 1 1/4 inch long hardware we've been using for all of these. So same thing, flat washer over there, place your bolt through there, securing the 2 ends. Now on the other side, we've got another flat washer and then a nylock nut. And we'll go ahead and snug that down. Now the instructions do say to leave this loose enough that we can sort of maneuver everything by hand still. We're going to take our assembly here and we're just going to mock it up on the frame here. So we're going to be using this frame rail. So you can sort of rotate this as needed. So once I have it on the bottom of the frame here, it's nice and square. You may need to play with it a little bit by hand. I think that's pretty good. Now I'm just going to go ahead and mark out the center of the holes there in the bottom of the bracket. So I'm just using a paint marker for this. I'm going to go ahead and let this swing down. Now they are kind of faint, so I think I'm going to make them a little bit more pronounced there. But those are going to be our 2 marks. I'm going to come back with a center punch tool here and just sort of mark the center of those marks that we've already made. That's going to help our drill bit from walking on us. And now I'm going to take an 1/8 inch drill bit and I'm going to drill a pilot hole through both of those marks that we've just made. So now that we have our pilot holes drilled, I'm going to come back with a 3/16 inch drill bit and enlarge the holes to the final size. So next we're going to take one of our self-tapping bolts here and we're going to go ahead and use these to form the threads into that hole we just made. So you want to make sure that when you're forming these threads, we do so as straight as possible. And then we're going to take a 9/16 inch socket. I'm going to put a lot of upward pressure there. And I'm going to go ahead and start forming those threads. But again, make sure your bolt is going in as straight as possible. So I wasn't having much luck with these self-threading bolts that come in your kit. So I'm actually going to switch over to a 3 inch by 16 inch tap. And we're going to thread the holes that way. So I've got that one threaded. I'm just going to repeat that same process on the other side for this hole here. So now once we have our holes threaded, I'm just going to take our stabilizer here. Let's go ahead and rotate it into position. And we're actually just going to be securing this with the self-threading bolts that came in our kit that we tried to use earlier. So now we're going to come to the back side of our jack here. We're going to deal with this swivel bolt. So we're going to take another one of our stabilizer assemblies that we've pre-assembled. So again, this time we're going to make sure that the label is on the outside and our T-handle is on the top. So if I just go ahead and mock it up, I can see that's going to be the case. So now I'll just go ahead and attach this the same way we've been attaching them. So I'm going to take that 1.5 inch long bolt there with a flat washer. So I'm going to line everything up, slide my bolt through. And on the back side, I'll just secure it with that flat washer and lock nut. So it is a pretty tight fit here on this rear one, so we are going to have to use two 9/16 inch wrenches. So now we're going to take another one of our spacer mounts here, along with one of those smaller swivel bolts, and we'll go ahead and just place that through the bottom, just like we did with that other one. Place a flat washer on there. And now we'll just go ahead and tighten this down. Attach this to our outer arm here. And we're going to secure it using that same combination of hardware we've been using this entire time. So now we'll go ahead, take our paint marker here and center the bracket on the bottom of the frame. And we'll come back with our center punch here. And now that I have those two holes marked, we're pretty much just going to repeat the same steps we showed you over there. Drill an 1/8 inch pilot bit, open it up to 5/16, and then thread in your tap. So we've got this one secured, and again, we just repeated those same few steps that we just showed you there for that front one. So now I just want to make sure that the jacks are operating correctly there. So go ahead and loosen those T-handles there. And then extend the jacks to make sure they're not binding up on anything. And it looks pretty good so far, so I really don't think we're going to have any issues. I'll go ahead and raise these back up. So we've got this side done on the front. We're going to go ahead and just repeat those same steps that we showed you for the other side at the front. So we've got this side all buttoned up, and as you can see here, this is what it looks like. It's pretty much just a mirrored image of the other side. But that does it for the front of the trailer. Now we're going to work our way back to the rear of the trailer and show you the installation on those jacks. So we found our jacks at the rear of the trailer here. They look the same as the ones at the front. So for these, we're actually going to be just removing this bolt closest to the inside here. So a lot of these steps here are going to be very similar to the ones we showed you on the front. There are a few minor differences though. And then one of those differences is we're only dealing with the inside most bolt. Go ahead and get that bolt out of there. and then we'll replace it with our swivel bolt here. You want to make sure this side is facing the rear of the trailer. And we'll go ahead and tighten that down. So now we're going to take one of our strong arm assemblies, and again, paying attention to which side we have the label facing and where the handle is at. We want the handle on top and we want the label facing outward. Now what we also want to do is we're going to install our T-handle here. So we're going to apply some white grease there as the instructions, and we're also going to space the inner tube about 1 inch out from the outer tube. So I just measured from the outer tube there to that center of that weld there. But once I've got this mocked up, we can go ahead and set it onto that swivel bolt we just installed. And we'll secure it, again, using the same hardware we've used thus far. It's got that hex bolt there with a flat washer. There we go. And then on the bottom side, we use another flat washer and then a nylock nut. And once we get those both on there, we'll go ahead and tighten them down. So now we're going to take the other end of our strong arm, the one with the outer tube. So this is going to be a little bit different than what we've been using thus far. We're going to take this swivel bolt here, the shorter one. We're going to go ahead and place that into position there. And then I'm going to get ready one of our hex bolts, flat washer, and I'm going to secure it to there like so. I'm going to place on the flat washer on the back, our nylock nut, and I'll go ahead and tighten that down. So now that I have that swivel bolt on, I'm going to take one of these spacers here. I'm going to place it over the bolt like so, and then we're going to go ahead and mock it up on the frame underneath. So I can center that bolt. I'm going to hold that there. I'm going to take my paint marker and I'm going to mark the center of those holes. So now we're going to take our center punch tool here, and in the center of the marks we made, I'm going to make a little divot there, which is a guide for our drill bit. And now we're going to come back with an 1/8 inch drill bit here and open up our holes to the pilot size. Our final size for these is actually going to be 3/8 of an inch. So now that we have our holes drilled, we're going to take our smaller swivel bolt here, and then we're going to place one of these little silver spacers over that bolt, and then we're going to secure it to the 2 holes that we just drilled there. So it's going to be kind of hard to see, but from the inside, we're going to secure the top of this bolt with a flat washer and a nylock nut. And once you get it started by hand, you're going to take your 9/16 inch wrench and you're going to hold it at the top there, the nut that is, and then we're going to tighten it with a screwdriver like so. So we've got those water lines on our way there, so I can't make a full revolution, but we can still get it tight just like this. So it's starting to get snug here, so before I tighten it all the way up, I am going to rotate this plate over to align our hole. And then for this one here, we're just going to take the hex bolts that we've been using. There's only a couple different kinds of bolts in your kit, so it really shouldn't be too much of a mix up here. We're going to place a flat washer on the bottom, and I'm just going to stick that bolt up through there and secure it on the top with another flat washer and nylock nut. So sometimes when they're really tight, it actually helps just the thread. That way you can get your bolt all the way in. So I've got both of our bolts snug here. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that this can still swivel, and it can perfect. So now I'm going to go ahead and attach our arm. So we actually only install one arm on our rear jacks here, so once you have this side done, you'll just repeat those same few steps over on the other side. So now that we have our other side installed here, that's going to do it today for our look and installation of the JT Strong Arm Stabilizer Jacks here on our 2022 Jayco Jay Feather.